The metal floors of Nexus Prime Station hummed with the vibration of massive engines, keeping the structure stable in deep space. Commander Jake Morrison walked through the corridors, his black Navy SEAL uniform standing out among the colorful clothing of various alien species. The station served as a training ground, where different races of the Galactic Federation learned to work together. Jake had been on the station for 2 months now, leading a team of 12 human soldiers. Every day brought new challenges as they tried to prove that Earth's warriors belonged among the stars. The other species treated them with polite distance. Like children who had wandered into an adult conversation, today was different. Today was the quarterly combat assessment, where each species would demonstrate their fighting skills to the Federation commanders. Jake knew this was their chance to show what humans could really do. He entered the main briefing room, a massive circular chamber with seats arranged in tiers. Representatives from 12 different species sat in their designated sections. The Zeltherians occupied the largest area, their tall forms covered in natural armor that looked like insect shells. The aquatic Delphians filled tanks of blue water, their dolphin-like bodies graceful even in artificial environments. Small, gray-skinned technicians clustered around their data tablets, constantly recording information. Jake took his seat in the human section, joined by his second-in-command, Lieutenant Lisa Hayes. She was tough as nails, having earned her rank through 3 tours in hostile alien territories. Behind them sat the rest of their team, all volunteers who had asked to be part of this program. "You think they'll give us a fair shot today?" Lisa whispered to Jake. "Doubt it," Jake replied quietly. "But we'll make our own opportunities." Admiral Cornack, a massive blue-skinned titan, stood at the center of the room. His voice boomed across the chamber without need for amplification. "Today we evaluate combat readiness. Each species will demonstrate their capabilities in simulated battle scenarios. We begin with the Zeltherian Empire." Captain Vex Korath rose from his seat. Even among his own kind, he was large. 7 feet tall with 4 powerful arms, his chitinous skin gleamed under the chamber lights. Scars covered his body, each one a mark of battles won. The other species watched him with obvious respect and fear. "The Zeltherian military has defended the galaxy for over 3,000 years, Korath announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "We have crushed rebellions, defeated pirates, and maintained order across 50 star systems. Our warriors are bred for battle, trained from birth, and equipped with the finest weapons the Federation can provide." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Several species nodded their approval. Jake noticed how they all looked at the Zeltherians with admiration. Korath continued his presentation, showing holographic displays of Zeltherian victories. Their tactics were impressive, built on overwhelming firepower and superior technology. Their soldiers moved like a perfectly coordinated machine, each warrior knowing exactly what to do in any situation. When the presentation ended, Admiral Cornack called for the next demonstration. One by one, each species showed their strengths. The Delphians demonstrated their incredible speed and agility in water-based combat. The technicians revealed weapons that could disable entire starships with electromagnetic pulses. Finally, Admiral Cornack's gaze fell on the human section. "Commander Morrison, please present humanity's contribution to our collective defense." Jake stood up, feeling the weight of every alien eye in the room. He walked to the center of the chamber, knowing that this moment would define how the galaxy saw his species. "Humans have been fighting for survival for millions of years," Jake began. "We didn't evolve on a peaceful world. Earth forced us to become adaptable, resourceful, and determined. We learned to work together because we had to. We learned to never give up because giving up meant death." He activated his own holographic display, showing images of human conflicts throughout history. Ancient battles with swords and shields, modern warfare with advanced technology, and recent engagements against alien threats. We don't have natural armor like the Zeltherians. We can't breathe underwater like the Delphians. We aren't as smart as the technicians, but we have something else. We have the will to keep fighting when everything seems hopeless. Jake could see some of the aliens leaning forward, interested despite themselves. Others looked skeptical, as if they didn't believe humans could offer anything useful. "Our training focuses on adaptation and improvisation. Every human soldier learns to use any weapon, fight in any environment, and overcome any obstacle. We don't just follow orders, we think for ourselves and find solutions that others might miss. The presentation showed human soldiers in action, demonstrating their flexibility and creative problem-solving. Unlike the perfectly coordinated movements of other species, humans seemed chaotic and unpredictable. But Jake knew that this apparent disorder was actually their greatest strength. When he finished, the room fell silent. Admiral Cornock nodded politely, but Jake could see the disappointment in his eyes. The other species looked unimpressed, some even amused. Captain Korath stood up slowly, his forearms crossing over his chest. "Commander Morrison, your presentation was interesting, but I must question whether humans truly belong in this program." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Jake felt his team tense behind him, but he remained calm. "What do you mean, Captain?" "I mean that warfare has evolved beyond the primitive methods of your species," Korath said, his voice carrying a tone of condescension that made Jake's jaw clench. "Modern combat requires discipline, coordination, and superior technology. What you call adaptability, we call chaos. What you call determination, we call recklessness." Other aliens began nodding. In agreement, Jake could hear whispered conversations starting throughout the chamber. Korath continued, warming to his subject. "The Federation accepted Earth into our alliance out of compassion, not because you had anything to offer. Your world is small. Your technology is primitive and your military is based on outdated concepts. Perhaps it would be better if humans focused on more suitable roles, like farming or basic manufacturing." The insult hit Jake like a physical blow. He could feel the anger building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay professional. Behind him, he heard Lisa and his team shifting in their seats, ready to jump to their feet. "Captain Korath," Jake said carefully, "I think you might be underestimating what humans can do." "Am I?" Korath stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over Jake. "Your species has been part of the Federation for 30 years, and what have you accomplished? You've served as support staff and maintenance workers. You've never led a major operation or won a significant battle. You're useful, I'll give you that, but you're not warriors." The room had gone completely quiet now. Even Admiral Cornack was watching with interest, waiting to see how this confrontation would play out. Jake took a deep breath. "Maybe you're right. Captain, maybe humans aren't like other species. Maybe we don't fight the way you think we should." "Exactly," Korath said with satisfaction. "I'm glad you're finally beginning to understand. But there's one thing you're wrong about," Jake continued, his voice getting harder. "You think that makes us weak? You think that makes us less than you?" Korath's expression shifted slightly, sensing something changing in Jake's tone. "The truth is, Captain, you've never seen what happens when you push a human too far. You've never seen what we're really capable of when we stop trying to be polite and start trying to survive." Before anyone could react, Korath's massive hand moved in a blur, striking Jake across the face with enough force to send him sliding across the smooth floor. The crack of the impact echoed through the silent chamber. Jake lay still for a moment, blood trickling from his split lip. Every alien in the room expected him to stay down, to accept his place in the hierarchy. But Jake Morrison was a Navy SEAL, trained to never surrender, never quit, and never leave a fallen comrade behind. And right now, his fallen comrade was humanity's honor. Slowly, Jake got to his feet. Jake Morrison wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. The metallic taste filled his mouth as he stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving Captain Korath's face. The Zeltharian warrior stood with his forearms crossed, a satisfied expression on his alien features. He had made his point in front of everyone. The chamber remained silent. Hundreds of alien eyes watched the small human figure straighten his uniform and take a step forward. Many of them had never seen violence like this before. Their own species settled disputes through debate, formal challenges, or technological superiority. Raw physical confrontation was considered primitive, but Jake Morrison had grown up in a different world. Earth was not like the peaceful planets where most Federation species had evolved. Earth was a world where predators hunted in packs, where natural disasters could destroy entire civilizations, where survival meant being stronger, faster, and smarter than everything trying to kill you. For millions of years, humans had fought not just other humans, but bears, wolves, lions, and countless other creatures that saw them as prey. Jake's ancestors had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that lasted for generations. They had climbed to the top of the food chain not through natural armor or superior size, but through intelligence, cooperation, and an absolute refusal to give up. They had learned that sometimes the only way to survive was to become more dangerous than the things hunting them now, looking at Koreth's smug expression. Jake felt something ancient and powerful stirring in his chest. It was the same feeling his ancestors had felt when facing down a charging mammoth or standing against impossible odds. It was the feeling that had carried humanity from caves to starchers. It was the feeling of a cornered predator. Jake took another step forward. The movement was different now, more fluid, more controlled. His shoulders relaxed, his hands hung loose at his sides, and his breathing became steady and measured. Most of the aliens in the room, he looked calm, almost peaceful. But Lieutenant Lisa Hayes recognized the signs immediately. She had seen Jake move like this before, during their mission to the Outer Rim colonies. She had watched him single-handedly clear a building full of pirates who had been terrorizing civilian settlements. She knew what was coming. "Stay back," she whispered to the other human soldiers behind her. "Give him room." Captain Koreth noticed Jake's approach and chuckled, a sound like grinding stone. "What's this, little human? Do you want me to hit you again? Perhaps you didn't learn your lesson the first time." Jake stopped 3 feet away from the massive alien. At this distance, Koreth towered over him, all 7 feet of armored muscle and razor-sharp claws. The Zeltharian's forearms could strike from multiple angles simultaneously, and his natural armor could deflect most conventional weapons. But Jake Morrison wasn't thinking about conventional weapons. "You know what your problem is, Captain?" Jake said quietly, his voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "You think size matters? You think strength matters? You think all those fancy weapons and armor make you invincible?" Koreth's expression shifted slightly. Something in Jake's tone was different now, more confident, more dangerous. "Are you threatening me, human?" "No," Jake replied, still in that same quiet voice. "I'm educating you." What happened next took exactly 2 seconds, but to everyone watching, it seemed to last much longer. Jake moved. The first thing that shocked the aliens was the speed. Humans weren't supposed to be fast. Their biology suggested they were endurance runners, built for long-distance travel rather than explosive bursts of speed. But what they didn't understand was that human speed wasn't just about muscle fibers and bone density. It was about neural processing, about the ability to think and react faster than an opponent could adapt. Jake's first move targeted Koreth's primary weakness. Zeltharian's armor was strongest at the front and sides, but there were gaps where the natural plates met. Jake's right hand struck like a spear, fingers extended, hitting a nerve cluster just below Koreth's lower left arm. The alien's entire left side went numb instantly, but Jake wasn't finished. As Koreth staggered from the unexpected attack, Jake spun around his massive opponent, using the alien's own size against him. Koreth tried to turn to follow, but Jake was already moving to his next target. The second strike hit the back of Koreth's neck right where the skull met the spine. It wasn't a killing blow, but it disrupted the alien's balance and coordination. Koreth's vision blurred, and his remaining arms flailed. Wildly as he tried to regain control, Jake ducked under the desperate swings and delivered his final attack. Using both hands, he struck pressure points on either side of Koreth's head, hitting nerve clusters that every humanoid species seemed to share. The technique was something human fighters had discovered through trial and error, fighting aliens across the galaxy. Different species, same basic nervous system. Captain Koreth's eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed like a falling tree. The massive warrior hit the floor with a crash that shook the entire chamber. He lay still, breathing but unconscious. His supposedly superior alien physiology, unable to cope with the precise application of force to his nervous system. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved, no one spoke, no one even seemed to breathe. The other Zeltharians stared at their fallen captain in shock. The warrior who had never been defeated, who had conquered star systems and crushed rebellions, had been brought down by a human in 2 seconds. Jake stood over Korath's unconscious form, barely breathing hard. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every alien species present. When he spoke, his voice was calm and professional, as if he had just finished a routine training exercise. "The thing about humans," he said, "is that we don't fight fair. We fight to win. We study our enemies. We find their weaknesses, and we exploit them without mercy. We don't care about honor or tradition or showing off. We care about going home alive." Admiral Cornock was the first to recover from his shock. The massive blue-skinned commander stood up slowly, his expression unreadable. "Commander Morrison, what have you done?" "I defended myself, sir," Jake replied simply. "Captain Korath struck me without provocation. I responded appropriately." "You defeated a Zeltharian elite warrior in single combat," Admiral Cornack said, his voice filled with disbelief. "That's not supposed to be possible." Jake shrugged. "A lot of things aren't supposed to be possible, Admiral. But humans have been doing impossible things for a long time. That's what we do." The other human soldiers were on their feet now, moving. To stand behind their commander, Lisa Hayes stepped up beside Jake, her hand resting on her sidearm. The rest of the team formed a protective circle, ready for whatever came next. But the expected retaliation didn't come. Instead, something else happened. The aliens began to whisper among themselves, their voices filled with a mixture of fear and respect. The small gray technicians were frantically taking notes, recording everything they had witnessed. The aquatic Delphians floated in their tanks, their large eyes fixed on Jake with newfound interest, and in the Zeltharian section, the other warriors were helping their captain to his feet. Korath was awake now, shaking his head to clear the fog from his mind. When he saw Jake watching him, he didn't show anger or hatred. Instead, for the first time since the humans had arrived on the station, he showed respect. "How?" Korath asked, simply his voice hoarse from the nerve strikes. "Practice," Jake replied. "Lots and lots of practice." The confrontation was over, but Jake knew that everything had changed. The other species would never look at humans the same way again. They had seen what happened when you pushed a human warrior too far. They had learned that size and strength weren't everything, that sometimes the most dangerous opponent was the one you underestimated. As the chamber began to empty, aliens filing out in small groups and whispering conversations, Admiral Cornock approached Jake. The massive commander looked down at the human, his expression thoughtful. "Commander Morrison," he said quietly, "I think we need to have a private conversation about humanity's role in the Federation military." Jake nodded. "Yes, sir, I think we do." The galaxy was about to discover what humans were really capable of, and Jake Morrison had a feeling they were going to need that knowledge sooner than anyone expected. The news of Jake Morrison's victory spread through Nexus Prime Station like wildfire. Within hours, every alien on the base had heard some version of the story. By the end of the day, reports were being transmitted to Federation headquarters across the galaxy. The small human who had defeated a Zeltharian elite warrior in 2 seconds had become the most talked-about person in the known universe. Lieutenant Lisa Hayes sat in the human quarters, watching the constant stream of messages coming through their communication system. Requests for interviews, demands for explanations, and invitations to demonstrate human combat techniques filled their data screens. She had never seen anything like it. "Jake, you need to see this," she called to her commander, who was trying to eat his dinner in peace. Jake walked over and looked at the screen. Message after message scrolled past, each one more urgent than the last. Military commanders from 12 different species wanted to know how he had done it. Scientists requested permission to study human anatomy. Even civilian news networks were offering huge sums of money for exclusive interviews. "Oh, this is getting out of hand," Jake muttered. "All I did was defend myself." "All you did was prove that everything the galaxy thought they knew about humans was wrong," Lisa replied. "Look at this one." She pulled up a message from Dr. Zephes, the Federation's leading expert on alien biology. The elderly scientist wanted to bring a team of researchers to study human combat capabilities. Another message came from General Thrak. Of the Titan Defense Force, requesting that Jake train a unit of their soldiers in human fighting techniques. But not all the messages were positive. Several came from Zeltharian military commanders, demanding that Jake face formal charges for assaulting their officer. They claimed that his attack was unprovoked, and that he had used illegal techniques banned by Federation combat regulations. "The Zeltharians want my head," Jake said, reading through the complaints. "They're saying I attacked Korath without warning." "We have the security recordings," Lisa pointed out. "Everyone saw him hit you first. Doesn't matter. They're saying I used excessive force. That I should have fought, according to accepted military protocols." Jake's personal communicator buzzed. Admiral Cornek's voice came through the small device, his tone serious and formal. "Commander Morrison, report to my office immediately. Come alone." The walk to the Admiral's office felt longer than usual. Jake passed groups of aliens in the corridors, all of them stopping their conversations to stare at him. Some looked at him with newfound respect, others with fear, and a few with barely concealed hostility. The comfortable anonymity he had enjoyed for months was gone forever. Admiral. Cornek's office occupied an entire deck near the top of the station. The massive blue-skinned commander sat behind a desk made from a single piece of crystallized meteor rock. The walls were covered with displays showing fleet movements, patrol routes, and intelligence reports from across the galaxy. "Sit down, Commander," the Admiral said without looking up from his datapad. Jake took the offered chair, noting that it had been adjusted to human proportions. That was new. For today, he had always been forced to sit in furniture designed for larger alien species. "Do you understand what you've done?" Admiral Cornock asked, finally looking at Jake with his large, dark eyes. "I defended myself, sir." "You've turned the galaxy upside down." The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed news reports from dozens of different planets. Each one featured images of Jake's confrontation with Captain Korath. Every species is asking the same question. If humans can do this, what else can they do? Jake remained silent, letting the Admiral continue. "The Zeltharian Empire is demanding justice. They want you court-martialed for assault. They claim you used forbidden techniques and that your actions violated 17 different Federation military codes." "And what do you think, Admiral?" Admiral Cornock leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his massive weight. "I think the Zeltharians are scared. For 3,000 years, they've been the Federation's primary military force. They built their entire culture around being the strongest, the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. And you just proved that wrong in 2 seconds." The Admiral stood up and walked to the wall display, pointing at various sectors of the galaxy. "But there are more important things to worry about than Zeltharian pride. We've been receiving disturbing reports from our Outer Rim territories. Ships have been disappearing. Entire colonies have gone silent. Our long-range scouts are reporting something moving in the dark space between galaxies." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Dark space was the empty void beyond the galactic rim, where no intelligent life was supposed to exist. What kind of something? We don't know yet. Whatever it is, it's big, and it's heading this way. Our best estimates suggest we have maybe 6 months before it reaches Federation space. The implications hit Jake immediately. If there was a new threat approaching, the Federation would need every advantage they could get. The timing of his confrontation with Korath couldn't have been worse, or perhaps it couldn't have been better. "You want to know what I really think, Commander?" Admiral Cornack continued. "I think the universe just gave us a wake-up call. We've gotten comfortable, soft. We've been playing at war for so long that we've forgotten what real fighting looks like. Zeltharians are excellent soldiers, but they fight like gentlemen. They follow rules, they maintain honor, they fight fair. And humans don't," Jake said, understanding where this was going. "Exactly. Humans fight to survive. I have a feeling we're going to need that kind of fighting very soon." The Admiral returned to his desk and pulled up a new file. Jake could see his own service record displayed on the screen, along with detailed analysis of his combat techniques. "The Federation Council is meeting an emergency session tomorrow. They're going to discuss your case and decide what to do about the Zeltharian complaints. But more importantly, they're going to discuss how to respond to this new threat." "What do you need from me, sir?" "Need you to be ready for anything. The politicians are going to want to make an example of you to keep the peace with the Zeltharians. but the military commanders know we might need your skills. It's going to be a difficult balance. Jake's communicator buzzed again. This time it was Lisa's voice, urgent and concerned. Commander, you need to get back here right away. We have a problem. Go, Admiral Cornack said. But remember, Morrison, the galaxy is watching you now. Everything you do reflects on your entire species. Don't give them any more reasons to fear humans than they already have. Jake hurried back to the human quarters to find his team gathered around their main communication screen. Lisa looked up as he entered, her face pale with worry. What's wrong? Jake asked. You just received a priority message from Earth Command, Lisa replied. 3 Federation colonies on the Outer Rim have gone completely dark. No communications, no distress signals, nothing. Long-range sensors show the planets are still there, but there are no signs of life. Jake felt his stomach drop. This happened? The last communication from any of them was 48 hours ago. But here's the scary part. The colonies that went dark weren't random. They were all major military installations with some of the Federation's most advanced defensive systems. Show me the tactical analysis, Jake ordered. Lisa brought up a star map showing the affected systems. They formed a rough line pointing directly toward the heart of Federation space. Whatever had destroyed those colonies was moving fast and appeared to be following a deliberate path. There's more, Lisa continued. The few sensor readings we did manage to get before the colonies went dark show energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. The attacking force used weapons and tactics that don't match any known species. Jake studied the data, his military training automatically analyzing the patterns. The attacks were too organized and too efficient to be random raids. Someone or something was conducting a systematic campaign against the Federation. Sir, one of his other team members spoke up. There's been another development. Captain Korath requested a meeting with you. He says it's urgent and concerns the security of the entire galaxy. Jake looked at his team, seeing the same concern in their eyes that he felt in his gut. The confrontation with Korath had seemed like the biggest problem he would face today. Now it looked like it might be the least of his worries. Set up the meeting, Jake decided. If we're facing something that can wipe out entire colonies, we're going to need all the help we can get. Even from the Zeltharians. As his team began making the arrangements, Jake stared at the star map showing the destroyed colonies. Something was coming for the Federation, something that made Zeltharian warriors and human soldiers equally vulnerable. The real fight was just beginning. The emergency briefing room was packed with officers from every major species in the Federation.
Oh.
Jake Morrison sat at a table with his human team, surrounded by Zeltharians, Delphians, technicians, and representatives from a dozen other worlds. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Captain Korath entered last, his massive frame filling the doorway. The Zeltharian warrior looked different now. The arrogant confidence that had defined him before was gone, replaced by something Jake had never seen in him before: fear. Korath's eyes met Jake's across the room, and he nodded slightly. It wasn't friendship, but it was respect. Admiral Cornack stood at the front of the room, his blue skin looking pale under the harsh lights. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed the outer rim of the galaxy. Several star systems were marked in red, indicating colonies that had gone silent. The situation is worse than we initially thought, the Admiral began, his voice carrying the weight of terrible news. In the past 72 hours, we've lost contact with 18 Federation colonies. That's over 2 million civilians and military personnel. Murmurs of shock and dismay filled the room. Jake felt his stomach tighten. 2 million people, gone without a trace. Our long-range sensors have finally detected the source of these attacks, Admiral Cornack continued. The enemy fleet is massive, unlike anything we've ever encountered. They call themselves the Devourers, and they appear to be exactly what their name suggests. The display changed, showing grainy images captured by automated sensor drones. Jake had to fight to keep his expression neutral as he saw what they were facing. The enemy ships were enormous, organic-looking structures that seemed to be grown rather than built. They moved through space like living things, pulsing with an inner light that reminded Jake of deep-sea creatures from Earth's oceans. These are not ships in the traditional sense, Admiral Cornock explained. They appear to be living organisms, possibly a form of space-dwelling life that has evolved to consume other forms of life. Our analysis suggests they've been traveling through the void between galaxies for millions of years, feeding on any intelligent species they encounter. Dr. Zephes, the Federation's chief scientist, stood up to address the room. The elderly researcher's normally calm demeanor was shattered, replaced by barely controlled panic. We've analyzed the energy signatures from the destroyed colonies. The Devourers don't just kill their victims. They consume them completely, breaking down all organic matter and converting it into energy to fuel their own growth. Jake leaned forward, his military mind already analyzing the threat. How many ships are we talking about? Our best estimates suggest a fleet of over 50,000 vessels, ranging from small scout ships to massive motherships the size of small moons, Dr. Zephes replied. But that's not the worst part. They appear to be learning from each encounter, adapting their tactics based on our defensive strategies. Captain Korath spoke for the first time since entering the room. The Federation Navy engaged a Devourer Scout Force 3 days ago near the Centauri system. We lost 4 battle cruisers and didn't manage to destroy a single enemy vessel. Our hulls adapted to our energy weapons, becoming more resistant with each hit. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Federation's military might, built on superior technology and coordinated tactics, was useless against an enemy that could adapt faster than they could adjust their strategies. How long do we have? Jake asked. Based on their current speed and trajectory, the main Devourer fleet will reach the core Federation worlds in approximately 4 months, Admiral Cornack answered. We need to find a way to stop them before they reach the populated systems. General Thrak of the Titan Defense Force stood up, his massive frame rivaling even the Zeltharians in size. We should mobilize every available ship and meet them at the rim. A coordinated assault with our entire fleet might be enough to stop them. That's exactly what they're expecting, Jake said, drawing surprised looks from around the room. They've been fighting for millions of years, consuming entire civilizations. They know how military forces think and operate. They're counting on us to meet them with overwhelming force. Then what do you suggest, human? Korath asked, his tone respectful but challenging. Jake stood up, feeling the weight of every alien eye in the room. We need to stop thinking like a military and start thinking like prey, because that's what we are. We're not hunters going after the Devourers. We're prey trying to survive. He walked to the front of the room, gesturing at the display. At their attack pattern, they're not randomly destroying colonies. They're systematically targeting our military installations, our communication hubs, our supply depots. They're cutting us off from each other, making it impossible to coordinate a unified defense. Lisa Hayes joined him at the front, pulling up tactical displays on her datapad. The commander is right. Every colony they've attacked has been a strategic target. They're not just feeding, they're preparing the battlefield. But how do we fight something that can adapt to our weapons? Dr. Zephes asked. Jake smiled grimly. We don't fight them the way they expect. We don't use our best weapons first. We don't coordinate our attacks. We don't follow standard military doctrine. We fight like humans. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Several alien officers looked at each other uncertainly. Explain, Admiral Cornock ordered. The Devourers have been successful because they've been fighting civilized species, Jake continued. Races that follow rules, that fight with honor, that use predictable tactics. But humans didn't evolve to be civilized. We evolved to survive. He activated his own display, showing historical battles from Earth. On my world, we had a saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. We lie, we ambush, we use psychological warfare, we turn enemies against each other. We do whatever it takes to win. Captain Korath was nodding slowly. You're suggesting we abandon conventional military strategy? I'm suggesting we fight dirty, Jake replied. We hit them where they don't expect it. We use weapons they haven't seen before. We make them think we're weak, then surprise them with our real strength. And what is our real strength? General Thrak asked. Jake looked around the room, meeting the eyes of representatives from every major species. Each other. The Devourers have been fighting individual civilizations one at a time. They consume a species, learn from the experience, then move on to the next target, but they've never faced anything like the Federation. He pulled up a new display, showing the combined military forces of all Federation worlds. We have the Zaltherian ground forces, the best fighters in the galaxy. We have Delphian naval units that can operate in any environment. We have technician, electronic warfare capabilities that can disrupt enemy communications. We have Titan heavy weapons platforms that can crack planets. And we have humans, Lisa added, understanding where Jake was going with this. Humans who know how to coordinate all these different capabilities into something the Devourers have never seen before. Jake concluded, we don't just fight as separate species helping each other. We fight as one unified force, using every advantage we have. Admiral Cornock was quiet for a long moment, considering Jake's words. You're talking about completely restructuring our military command. Mixing units from different species, sharing technology and tactics that have been classified for centuries? Talking about survival, Jake replied simply, the Devourers are coming whether we're ready or not. We can face them as separate species and die alone, or we can face them as one people and maybe have a chance. Dr. Zephy spoke up from his seat. There's another factor to consider. Our analysis suggests the Devourers operate through a form of collective consciousness. They share information instantaneously across their entire fleet. If we can find a way to disrupt that connection, we might be able to create confusion in their ranks. How do we do that? Korath asked. Give them information they can't process, Jake answered. We overwhelm their collective consciousness with so much conflicting data that they can't adapt fast enough to counter our attacks. The room was silent as everyone absorbed this new strategy. It was radical, unprecedented, and possibly their only hope. I want detailed plans on my desk in 24 hours, Admiral Cornack finally said. Commander Morrison. You'll coordinate with representatives from each species to develop integrated battle tactics. Captain Korath, you'll oversee the training of mixed species units. Dr. Zephy's, find me a way to disrupt their communications. As the meeting broke up, Jake found himself walking alongside Captain Korath. The Zaltherian warrior looked thoughtful, his forearms clasped behind his back. Yume Korath said quietly, I owe you an apology. I underestimated your species. We all make mistakes, Jake replied. The important thing is learning from them, indeed. And I've learned something important today. The galaxy needs warriors like you. It's not because you're the strongest or the fastest, but because you think differently. You see solutions where others see only problems. Jake nodded. We're going to need that kind of thinking to survive what's coming. As they walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, Jake could see the changes already beginning. Mixed groups of aliens were working together, sharing information and resources. The Battle of Centauris began at dawn on a Tuesday, though time had little meaning in the vacuum of space. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Federation command ship Unity, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared to face an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. 4 months of desperate preparation had led to this moment. Mixed-species crews worked together on ships designed by combining the best technology from every Federation world. Zaltherian warriors trained alongside human soldiers, learning to fight without honor when survival was at stake. Delphian pilots practiced coordinated attacks with technician drone operators. The galaxy had never seen cooperation like this before, but would it be enough? The Devourer fleet filled the view screen like a living nightmare. 50,000 organic ships moved through space with the fluid grace of ocean predators. The largest vessels were the size of Earth's moon, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. Smaller ships swarmed around them like antibodies protecting a massive organism. Contact in 30 minutes, reported Lieutenant Lisa Hayes from her position at the tactical station. She had been promoted to Fleet Communications Coordinator. Responsible for keeping all the different species working together during the battle? Jake nodded, his eyes never leaving the enemy formation. In the past 4 months, he had learned more about the Devourers than he ever wanted to know. They were ancient beyond measure, a species that had consumed countless civilizations across multiple galaxies. They fought with the patience of creatures that had all the time in the universe and the hunger of predators that could never be satisfied. But Jake had also learned their weaknesses. "Status report from all fleet commanders," he ordered. "Captain." Korath's voice came through the communication system first. The Zeltharian was leading the assault teams that would board the enemy ships. "Boarding units ready. All warriors understand the mission. We fight to disable, not to destroy." General Thrak of the Titans reported next. "Heavy weapons, platforms in position. We are prepared to provide cover fire and create openings in their formation." Dr. Zephes, now serving as the fleet's science coordinator, gave his update. "Electronic warfare systems are online, ready to flood their collective consciousness with false information." One by one, the other commanders checked in. Delphian fast attack squadrons, technician support vessels, and ships from a dozen other species all confirmed their readiness. At the center of it all, human coordinators worked to keep everything synchronized. "Remember," Jake announced to the entire fleet, "this isn't about being heroes. This isn't about fighting with honor or following the rules of war. This is about survival. We do whatever it takes to protect our people and our worlds." The Devourer fleet began to accelerate, moving toward the Federation forces with predatory grace. Jake could see their ships changing as they approached, adapting their hulls and weapons based on intelligence gathered from previous battles. They thought they knew what to expect. They were wrong. "Execute Phase 1, Jake ordered. The Federation fleets scattered like leaves in the wind. Instead of maintaining formation and meeting the enemy head-on, the ships spread out across a massive area of space. To the Devourers, it must have looked like panic. Like the Federation forces were breaking apart under pressure. That was exactly what Jake wanted them to think. The Devourers pursued the scattered ships, their formation stretching thin as they tried to engage multiple targets. Their collective consciousness was designed to coordinate attacks against unified enemies, not to track hundreds of individual vessels moving in seemingly random patterns. "Phase 2, Jake commanded. Suddenly, the scattered Federation ships weren't running anymore. They were setting traps. Technician vessels that had appeared to be fleeing instead dropped electronic warfare mines that disrupted Devourer communications. Delphian attack squadrons that had seemed panicked began coordinated strikes on isolated enemy ships. Weapons platforms that had retreated beyond the effective range of Devourer. Weapons opened fire with devastating accuracy. The enemy fleet tried to adapt, but Jake had planned for that too. Every few minutes, the Federation forces changed tactics completely. Energy weapons gave way to kinetic projectiles. Coordinated attacks became individual harassment strikes. Large ships withdrew, while smaller vessels pressed forward. The collective consciousness, which had been their greatest strength against other enemies, became a liability. They were receiving so much conflicting information that they couldn't process it fast enough to develop effective countermeasures. But Jake knew that this confusion wouldn't last forever. The Devourers were already beginning to adapt to the chaos. Soon they would find a way to coordinate their responses despite the electronic interference. It was time for the real attack. "All units, this is Morrison," Jake announced. "Execute final phase. Target the mother ship." At the center of the Devourer fleet sat their command vessel, a massive organic structure that served as the brain of their collective consciousness. If Jake's plan worked, destroying or disabling that ship would cut off communication to the rest of the fleet. But the mothership was heavily defended. Surrounded by layers of smaller vessels and protected by weapons that could crack planets, getting close enough to attack it would require sacrifices that Jake didn't want to think about. "Boarding teams, go," he ordered. Captain Korath led the charge, commanding a mixed force of Zeltharian warriors and human soldiers in heavily armored assault ships. They punched through the Devourer defensive lines, taking massive casualties, but creating openings for the follow-up waves. Jake watched the tactical display as red dots representing Federation ships winked out one by one. Lost signal meant dozens of brave souls who would never see their homes again, but their sacrifice was creating the opportunity they needed. "Breach successful," Korath reported, his voice tight with pain. Jake could see from the medical readings that the Zeltharian captain was badly injured, but still fighting. were inside the mothership, beginning search for the control center. The interior of the Devourer vessel was a nightmare of organic passages and living walls that responded to the intruder's presence. The boarding teams fought their way through creatures that seemed to be part of the ship itself, facing horrors that would have broken the minds of most civilized beings. But Jake had chosen his people well. Zeltharian warriors who lived for battle, human soldiers who refused to quit, and representatives from other species who had learned that sometimes survival required becoming monsters themselves. "Control center located," Korath announced. "It's like anything we've ever seen. The entire ship appears to be controlled by a single massive organism, some kind of evolved brain." Jake made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life: destroy it, whatever it takes. What happened next was something the boarding teams would never talk about in detail. They found the Devourer Queen, a creature of such alien intelligence and malevolent hunger that, looking at it directly, caused madness in some species. But Jake had prepared them for this too. Humans, it turned out, were uniquely suited to face cosmic horrors. Their ancestors had survived by adapting to any threat, no matter how terrible. When faced with something beyond comprehension, they didn't freeze or go insane. They found a way to kill it. The battle inside the mothership lasted for 3 hours. When it finally ended, Captain Coral's voice came through the communication system one last time. "Target eliminated. The Queen is dead. Pete, the Queen is dead." Across the battlefield, the effect was immediate and devastating. Cut off from their controlling intelligence, the Devourer ships began to drift aimlessly. Their weapons fell silent. Their coordination collapsed. Their adaptation stopped. The Federation fleet moved in for the final assault, destroying the now helpless enemy vessels. After millions of years of consuming civilizations across the universe, the Devourers had finally met their match. When the battle was over, Jake stood on the observation deck of the Unity, looking out at the debris field that had once been the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. The cost had been enormous. Nearly half the Federation fleet was gone. Thousands of brave souls would never return home. But they had one. Admiral Cornack joined him at the observation window, his blue skin pale with exhaustion. "It's over, Morrison. They're all gone." Nodded, but he didn't feel like celebrating. The Devourers were ancient, Admiral. They'd been fighting and winning for millions of years. They'd consumed entire galaxies, and we stopped them. "How do you think we managed it?" Admiral Cornack asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had led to this. Victory. The confrontation with Korath that had started it all, the months of preparation, the desperate battle that had just ended. "Because we learned to fight like humans," he finally said. "We learned that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to become something your enemies can't understand or predict. We learned that survival isn't about being noble or civilized. It's about refusing to give up, no matter what the cost." Admiral Cornack placed a massive hand on Jake's shoulder. "The galaxy owes humanity a debt it can never repay. You've shown us that strength isn't just about size or technology.